All right, guys. So for Cryptic Case Files this week, we have the privilege of having Mr. Lon Strickler in with us, and he is. So I'm making sure that I try to get the top guys for the cryptids from here on out, and of course, want to make sure definitely we got Lon, and I have Tobias for the other one because those are the two top names I think. When it comes to Chicago Mothman. You do good work. So, Lon, do you mind introducing yourself, and we'll start there.
Well, my name is Lon Strickler. I've been blogging on Phantoms and Monsters for 15 years. I've been an investigator for over 40 years. When I started, it was just hauntings and spirit and other strange phenomena, but I had an encounter with a Bigfoot in 81 and a winged humanoid in 1988. And ever since that time, I've kind of geared towards the cryptids, but, I look into everything, That's why I call it 410. Basically, it's anything that's unexplained.
Totally. Oh, that's awesome. You based out of so you're based out of the US. What's area of the US?
I'm near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. That is cool. So is that southwest corner, southeast corner? Remind me.
South Central.
Okay.
South Central.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, we're not far from the Maryland line.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I'm from the central Iowa area. So yeah, let's start out with so I'll kind of say the brief what I know about the Chicago Mothman is sightings started in 2011, correct? Um, we'll put it maybe high level. So, is the Chicago Mothman? Do you think it's the same thing as the Mothman known in Point Pleasant, West Virginia? Do you think we're talking the same guy, or?
No, I don't. I think this is something different. I mean, the only things that are the same are it's got wings, possibly some have red eyes. The body shape is entirely different.
Really?
I think the possibility that it could be a summoned being, like I believe what the Point Pleasant Mothman is. We work off a lot of theories with the Chicago area, Lake Michigan Mothman, or Chicago Phantom, what I originally called it, but because of the press, they had to come up with a sexy name. So it's the right, Chicago Mothman with them. Yep. So yeah, I mean, there are some differences, and there are a few things that are familiar. But overall, the amount of sightings and the length of sightings and the overall history in the area is somewhat different.
Okay. Interesting. So similar in name, more similar in name, but different. What states do you find that these reports are usually coming out of?
Well, this case itself is coming mainly out of Iowa. Excuse me, not Iowa. I used to say Iowa.
I wish. Give us some cryptid stuff out here.
Well, there are some flying beings in Iowa.
There are. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Illinois, central to south Wisconsin, central to north Indiana. Then there are a few scattered ones coming over from Michigan. So, most of our concentration is from 200 to 250 miles radius of Chicago itself.
That makes sense. It's crazy, man. So like running the Bigfoot Society account, every once in a while I haven't gotten a lot of these. Like I know you get sightings all the time, but I've gotten maybe 2, and I have this one from I would imagine a young lady from Wisconsin, and she was just like she said it was some kind of like Mothman humanoid, but the crazy thing is that she said she saw it from her house across the lake on the other side, and then later that night it was up on the roof making like scuttly noises or whatever, scuttling around. And it was crazy because a month or so later, then I watched the new Small Town Monsters movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like they pretty much said something very similar. I was like, holy mackerel. Like it was up on the roof. I was like, oh geez. Is that do you find occurrences in these reports that are kind of like repeating occurrences or similarities or
There's similarities. I mean, the witnesses overall generally have about the same type of sighting description and such. This whole investigation, there were the 3 sightings in 2011, but historically there have been sightings of similar beings kind of stretched over, for many, many years.
oh really?
But like I said, the 2011 sightings, there were 3 of them in South Chicago.
Mm,
And then that kind of waned off. We weren't getting much of anything. Then in the early 2017, MUFON started getting some sighting reports. And of course, when it goes to MUFON, we don't get any information other than what is in the
interesting.
original email. And we were lucky enough to find one of the early witnesses and talk to her. And from then on out, we made it known that we were actively investigating this. And I started publishing the sightings on Phantoms and Monsters. And,
Mm-hmm.
we just start keeping a record. And, they were coming for the most part directly to us.
Wow. That is awesome. When you say we, are you saying more like the royal we, or are you actually actively partnering with
Well, it's myself, Tobias, and
okay.
Manuel Navarrete. Manuel and I had been together doing this before Tobias got involved with it.
Okay. Yeah, because he is much younger. He's probably closer to my age, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, those guys are both about 20 years younger than me, if not more.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Um So you when if someone asks you when does the Chicago Mothman start, you're saying more 2017 then?
Yeah, I mean, most of the sightings started in early 2017.
Okay.
That first year they were kind of coming pretty quickly. Of course, when the press picked it up and
Mm-hmm.
they started to, you know, write about it, and then we were getting a few interviews with the local press and such. I figured, be honest with you, when October came around, I figured because of the weather, it would kind of slow back. And actually, it did.
Mm,
That's when I wrote the first book. And, but that next late winter, early summer in 2018, it started picking up. Early spring, and it started
okay.
picking up again. And quite frankly, there have been small lulls in the sightings,
Mm-hmm.
but we're up over 110, 115 sightings that we feel are credible sightings.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy,
yeah.
man. Um, thinking over the reports you've gotten, are there, if you were to make a description of the creature using commonality, um, common things from the sightings, how would you do a common sighting or a common
Uh,
description of it rather?
yeah, they're anywhere from 5 to 6 foot in height.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a very emaciated human-like body with thin legs and thin feet. Uh, the head is small, kind of thin. Some have red eyes, some don't. We have had blue, green eyes in a few cases. Those were up in Wisconsin. The wing structure overall is the bat wing, gargoyle wing membrane. The wings anywhere from
Okay.
10 to 15 foot in full wingspan. They very rarely flap their wings to get altitude.
Mm,
They have some type of supernatural mechanism that allows them to literally jettisoned from the ground up.
Hmm.
You know, that's something that has, you know, I don't know if that really was comparable to what was going on in Point Pleasant, but I know the one that I had the encounter with in '88 did the
Mm-hmm.
same.
Really?
Uh, and the colors are mostly very dark. Occasionally, we'll get like a brownish color. I had one who had described to me that the body was kind of shiny, wet looking like
Oh,
body.
weird. Yeah.
That was a very close encounter. Actually, it was right in front of them. Many people have been affected. I mean, literally just dropped to their knees from it.
Really?
Sometimes there has been the description of the body vibrating to the point where they could
Oh,
actually feel the vibrations.
wow.
So yeah, there are a few differences, but overall that's the overall description.
Okay.
And
Okay.
now when this was starting and continuing on, I believe that there were at least three of these things. Now
Three
where they're come,
total.
well, at least that many.
Wow. Okay.
Just because of the well, the slight differences, and then
Mm-hmm.
the locations, and a few other odds and ends, the way people describe them. We've had some that have described it actually having a ray like that of a pterodactyl coming off the back of the head, but
Oh.
not having a tail or
Oh,
anything
really?
like that.
You know what that reminds me of a little bit?
Well, you're talking about
Yeah,
Van Meter. I know what
I
you're
am.
thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just putting in there
But
that in there to get me.
we have had pterosaur sightings in the area as well.
Oh,
I
really?
mean, pterosaur sightings are
Oh,
something
geez.
that we get from a lot of different locations.
Wow.
So
Oh,
that's
man.
nothing unusual, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
So, you know, that's basically what's been going on. And of course, when most of this started, it was happening within the Chicago city limits. It started expanding out into northern Indiana, into central Illinois, northern Illinois, into southern Wisconsin. And we still get a lot of sightings in those areas. But
Hmm.
as of October of last year, the majority of the sightings now are coming out of O'Hare International and Rosemont and Rosemont neighborhood east of there.
Okay. Which the airport sightings from what I've read, those sound fascinating. I mean, is it like how, you always hear like you got the owls, hanging out by the airports? I mean, maybe this is something similar, but it's like man, like do you have any favorite of the airport centered sightings off the top of your head, or
Well, you know, the different witnesses and professional witnesses that have
Mhm.
seen this or heard about it or talked about it. The first, the first actual sighting that had a professional witness, basically, it was a TSA security person,
Wow.
and they came forward and talked to us. Then we have had other security guards. Uh, we've had two pilots come forward.
Man.
We had an air traffic controller actually come forward recently,
Mm.
and he's telling me that other are telling us that others that have worked in the tower have either seen it or heard about it from pilots and others. I talked to a supervisor at one of the airlines last week. She's telling me that she has access to all parts of the terminal for the airline plus the tarmac.
Okay.
And she said her employees are telling her left and right about this thing.
No way.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
pretty prevalent. They're calling it the O'Hara Mothman, between themselves.
Oh,
There are a
geez.
couple of chat rooms uh, on forums that these folks frequent, and they've
Mhm.
been talking about it on there as well. So
Wow.
all aspects of the airport are quite aware of what's going on. In fact, the management at O'Hare is very aware of it,
Mm.
and they've been trying to keep people from talking to us. And in fact, they named us as one of the groups to try to stay away from. So,
No way. Oh,
but
jeez.
we're lucky enough to have people that are brave, and and say something
Yeah.
to us. But
Man.
you know, we've got to watch because you know, I don't want anybody getting problems with their job because of it.
Well, yeah, and like you don't want to also like have that go the other way where it's like I try to go on a plane ride and it's like, oh, Mr. Strickler, you're on a list now, like I don't know, but I mean, probably that wouldn't happen, but like, yeah, you definitely wouldn't want anyone to lose their job over
Yeah,
something like that. But
yeah.
um, what's the craziest evidence you've seen come out of the Chicago Mothman sighting so far?
You know, the evidence has been very minimal.
Hmm. Okay.
We've had people that have taken a few photos, but because of the shock, and I don't know, you know, this is something that's very prevalent in the paranormal. You know,
Oh yeah.
when you had the shock of seeing something, the last thing you're thinking about is grabbing your camera and take a picture of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when this thing is fleeting, and I mean it shows up quickly, it doesn't really have any problem showing itself, but it's not going to do that for a long period of time. And these things just come and go, and it's pretty hard to get a photo of it. Plus, many of them are nighttime as
Oh,
well. So
okay.
yeah, it's not easy to do it.
No, definitely not. So you're
But I'll
saying,
tell you, the witnesses
yeah.
have been really great. I mean, you
Mm,
know, I've been
nice.
taking cryptid reports for a long time now, and these folks, when they come forward, many times right after it happened, they
Hmm.
tell you exactly what they saw, and they won't embellish on it. They
Wow.
just don't do it. Even when you try to trip them up, this
Okay.
doesn't happen. You know, we've had police officers contact us. We had the one police officer who was actually on duty with a crowd of people who saw this thing on top of a building.
Oh man.
Him and his partner saw it. I talked to one of the people that was there. He said he made a police report, but of course, the Chicago City Police Department says otherwise. We put in
Oh.
FOIA requests and they never came through.
Oh, really?
Uh,
Oh, that's
oh yeah,
cool.
yeah. We now
Wow.
now Tobias, he'll tell you he made a police report. He got a FOIA request for a police report in Woodstock, Illinois, and he
Okay.
got that. So, but no, we haven't gotten much cooperation with city at all. And in
Hmm.
fact, one of our witnesses worked for the mayor's office, and she told us that they know about it, and it's common knowledge within City Hall.
My
And
goodness.
I had to really keep it cool with her because I don't want her name getting out about it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So the police aren't, haven't been cooperating. Security companies have not been cooperating with footage and such. It's almost like there's a lid on this thing. So
I mean, a lot of that information is new to me, and just from hearing that, I'd have to say that that sounds kind of like totally like X-Files shut it down type stuff. Like that's crazy, Lon. Um, Kind of leads me into the question that I have from Greg in the Patreon. He says, with recent claims of not only alien existence but their habitation on our planet, do you believe that entities such as Mothman or the Chicago Mothman could be extraterrestrial?
they could be.
Yeah.
I think there is a connection with that, possibly because of some of the more recent sightings that involved a UFO account and
Really?
something being seen ascending into a UFO at the airport. Um,
Oh.
some small humanoid sightings by workers at the airport, as well as a sighting in particular that was in Rosemont, where a female was in a park at night,
Mm.
not far from her house. She was just there; she couldn't sleep, and she saw one of these winged beings accompanied by a gray alien and two female humanoids. And
You serious? Wow.
yeah, and when she
Oh
was
man.
watching, there was a blue flash of light, and those other beings disappeared, and this wing
Wow.
being took off. So yeah, I mean,
My goodness.
there's some few things that get us thinking about what this actually is. But I do believe from particularly because of two witnesses seeing these things literally vanish in front of them. I believe that these are probably interdimensional beings,
Hmm.
either from another reality. It could be something be extraterrestrial related. I don't know, but I don't think they're indigenous. I don't think they remain here
Okay.
long. I think they're moving in and out.
That's crazy. That is crazy. How recent are those reports with the UFOs coming into to play with?
Well, the UFO report was this past late spring, early summer.
Wow.
That was over the Rest Haven Cemetery, which is located on the airport grounds. There's a small, for people who don't know, there's a small cemetery at O'Hare, right
Oh, I
by
didn't know that.
some of the cargo areas. And
Okay.
this guy was out there on his break, had a smoke break about 1 in the morning. He was standing off the dock, off the road across from the cemetery, and saw this very bright oval UFO literally hovering above the cemetery. And he
Wow.
saw a humanoid like being ascending up into it. Now, he didn't say anything about having wings or anything like that, but that in itself is kind of unusual.
Hmm.
Um, of course, then there was another humanoid sighting. There have been a lot of strange things at O'Hare for years anyway. It's well known for UFO activity, and there has been a lot of paranormal activity in general in all the terminals. I mean, it's just there's a
Oh, and
lot of stuff
O'Hare?
going on. Oh yeah.
Really? I didn't know
Oh,
that.
O'Hare is, yeah, it's very
Okay.
haunted.
Oh, wow.
So,
Hmm.
I don't know what relationship that has with what's been going on, though. We're still working on a lot of theories on this. You of course, if we get the evidence that we believe that ties this in, to actually what it may be, then of course we're going to report about it. But at this
Hmm.
point, I just don't think any of us have any idea what it actually is.
I have way. I thought I had an idea after what you've said so far. I realize I have no idea. Yeah, this is a totally feels like a totally different scenario than the Mothman of Point Pleasant. Definitely, like,
Well, I think there may
kind of
be something
interesting.
similar. Like I have thought for a long time the Point Pleasant entity or Mothman, I believe, is a summoned being. And the reason
Hmm.
I say that is I have been there. I have done investigations, especially in the area of the West Virginia Ordnance Work. People call it the TNT plant.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of EVP activity, strong EVP activity. I'm an intuitive, and have picked up a lot of strange energy there.
In
Uh,
TNT.
oh yeah, and
Wow.
I believe that this Mothman being was somehow summoned from there. Now, where this energy is coming from, I believe is indigenous, has to do with all the historical activity that has happened in that area. I mean, there have been several battles there.
Yeah, sure.
There's been a
Okay.
lot of strife there, and been several Indian tribes that have moved in and out of that area for years. So I think this thing was called as either a sentinel or
Hmm.
some type of protector. That being itself was somewhat aggressive. It had no problems chasing people
Oh
about,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
but
Yep.
that doesn't seem to be what's going on in around Chicago. These things are they let themselves be known, they're seen, but very rarely is there any aggression.
Hmm.
They may feign attack at some point, uh, but it doesn't go beyond that.
So using that logic where you say with the Point Pleasant area, you've got all this stuff that has happened out there. You see, it's the Chicago Mothman is really like around the O'Hare. Could there be things that have happened around that area? You think that could bring that Mothman into play there? You mentioned already there's a cemetery on the that area, but
Mm. Well, cryptids in general seem to be attracted to high energy areas.
That's very
Um,
true. Yep.
O'Hara, of course, with the cemetery there, though, I think that, just like a lot of other cryptids are attracted to cemeteries. You hear a lot about Bigfoot and upright canine dogman being seen in cemeteries or along edges of battlefields or places where something has actually happened.
Hmm.
Uh, I think they're somewhat attracted to that. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but we've had, the one interesting thing that we have had, or, in Chicago or in the Chicago area, there are a lot of green areas, a lot of
Hmm.
forest preserves.
Oh yeah, sure.
And the one forest preserve in particular, just east of the airport, was is Des Plaines, along the Des Plaines River. There,
Yep.
we've had some humanoid sightings in there
Really.
from other people. So I don't know what that's all about. Manuel kind of thinks there's an occult connection there to some degree, but I don't know. We just really don't have the evidence to prove at this point.
Hmm. That is really interesting. Have you ever found that there are Mothman, Chicago Mothman sightings that you get, are just from the U.S. or do you get stuff from like Canada too?
Yeah, Canada has had some small flaps. The Niagara area and other areas around Lake Ontario have
Okay.
had some sightings over the
Hmm.
years. Nothing to what, nothing like what's going on in Chicago. I mean,
Okay.
we've had sightings all around the United States. When the thing in Chicago started off, we had 3 sightings down in Pasco County, Florida. We've had some sightings up in northern Ohio. We had one interesting one in Texas that was very similar. So yeah, we've gotten other sighting reports. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I know that with Bigfoot reports, there's different categories of them, depending on, maybe how close you get, stuff like that. Have you, and this is just because of me not spending enough time on researching it myself, but do you have different sighting classifications for your Mothman reports? Like, do some come to mind where it's like uh, it was right there as opposed to far away, or like a
Yeah,
class
there
A
have been
maybe?
some close and personal encounters.
Yeah.
The two that come to mind are the one we had in Bolingbrook, Illinois, and there was one that was right down by along the lakefront. The one in Bolingbrook was interesting. The woman who called in her neighborhood, there was a playground nearby where she used to walk through at night. It was like a nightly routine.
Hmm.
And one night she was walking through there and she saw this something that she actually thought it was 2 people embracing because it was wide, but it
Wow.
was also tall. Uh, she thought maybe they had an umbrella or something. But anyway, as she walked closer to it, she got within like 15 foot of it, and she started hearing gargling sounds.
Really?
Uh, then this thing slowly turned and faced her. Now she didn't see the face real well, but the shoulders were wide. This thing was about 6, 7 foot in height, all dark. It looked like it had a heavy coat on, like though I believe it was the wings that were wrapped around the body. This
Mm.
gurgling sound, I believe the thing was sleeping, to be honest with you. And it was just standing there in the middle of the sidewalk. And, of course, she's scared the hell out of her. So she's
Yeah.
trying to get away from this thing. And she veers off to the left and goes around it. By the time she gets past it, she's losing control of her legs and she
Whoa.
has to sit down. So here she is with
Wow.
weak legs, this thing not far from her, and she's trying to regain herself so she can get back home. After a couple of minutes, she was able to get up and run around the other direction. and go home. Went and told her son about it. He wanted to see it. They got in the car, drove up there, and this thing literally lunged out at it from some of the bushes off by the road.
What? Oh
Yeah.
man.
So when they got home, they started going on Google and started looking up wing being, whatever. But they got
Yeah.
me and they called me right away. And they were
Nice.
shook. I
Nice.
mean, they were really shook. The
Yeah.
other close encounter was more interesting, I believe. This happened several months later along Lakeshore Drive near Schilling Road. There's a large condominium there. This woman and her husband were visiting her mother. She lived in the condo. They were from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So they were out about 9:30 walking about, and they were walking in front of the condo on the way back, and they saw this dark thing fly in front of them, and just they followed it as it went up to the building, through the trees up to the building, and just sailed up the side of the building and hovered at the top like it was looking in a window.
Whoa, weird.
And as they watched it, this thing tilted back and started diving toward the trees. They started running, and they turned the corner to head to the entrance to the condo. And as they were doing it, this thing literally descended right in front of them.
What?
It had its wings spread. It was like 10, 15 foot in front of them, and it slowly descended. It was hovering about 5 foot above the sidewalk. There were other people on the other side of the street. She did tell me that she saw a flash go off like from a camera. There was a guy in a van who jumped in the van and hauled ass out of there. But as she was standing there, and her and her husband were standing there, she just dropped to her knees. She lost all control of her knees. This thing had its wings spread. It was dark. She said it was wet looking, had small feet that were vibrating. She could feel the vibration. It had the red eyes, and it just hovered there for 10 minutes, 10 seconds or so, and then slowly ascended. I mean, slowly ascended without the wings or no, just like it was being levitated, and went up into the air and took off. And he literally had to pick her up and carry her into the condominium.
Wow.
And they, the next day they called me. They were supposed to leave Chicago that day, but she couldn't get on a flight. She couldn't do it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And this is another interesting thing about these sightings. We've had celebrities, literally people that are well known,
Oh, are you
making some of
serious?
these reports. This
Really?
guy and his wife, this guy was a professional athlete in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
So, but we've had others. We've had people who worked in TV news. Yeah, we've had other folks that are well known, and so yeah, I mean that was very close encounter, very interesting encounter.
Yeah.
But most of them have been at some distance. But the descriptions overall are very similar.
That is fascinating. Man. Wow. Definitely going to spend some time looking into that. Definitely. Like those two stories were very cool. You said O'Hare is very haunted, and this might be a little bit of a rabbit trail, but when I think of like haunted, crazy airport, of course, I'm thinking of like the Denver airport. Is there
Yeah.
stuff that that happens out there that you've heard, or not really? It's just like
I've heard a lot of things come out of Denver.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I hear in Denver has to do with a cult or Illuminati
True.
or
That's true. Yeah.
Masonic things and such.
Yeah.
With the strange paintings and stuff that are at the airport. I've talked to people who have, been there and actually worked there, and there are some strange tales. But O'Hare itself and I don't know what the reason is behind it. I think it has something to do geologically with the area.
Interesting.
Uh, but I have
Okay.
talked to people for years who have reported being at the airport and seeing apparitions and stuff
Man.
move on its own, and just real strange feelings. Uh, I don't know how related it is to any of this. It may very well not be related at all, but it's just a strange area. And there are several airports throughout the world that have hauntings.
Hmm.
They really do. I'm familiar with some that were, I believe, part of crashes and such, and
Okay.
there are wandering beings, wandering entities moving about here and there. People see them, but O'Hare, I mean, it's just a lot of strange stuff goes on out there.
Oh, totally. I mean, I've flown through it a few times. It is a very interesting airport. Uh it's weird, man. Yeah. Well, not I've actually been stuck in O'Hare overnight. That's
Mhm,
not fun either. But um you talked about, so you're working with you have the team effort going on towards the Chicago Mothman. And
mhm.
is there a point where you could feel like, okay, we've gotten to this point, or is it more that your job, you feel, is to document everything and to figure out what's going on, or are you working towards a certain point or goal with this?
Well, I think at this point, even though it's been almost 4 years now, I think it's imperative for us to just keep at
Mhm.
documenting what we're getting,
Totally.
and make theories based upon that. You know, I'm I'm not really pushing to get an answer to this.
Mhm.
If I come out and say it's this, and that, then we're going to be held to that. I
Yeah,
just
that's
can't
true.
really prove as to what's really going on.
Yep. Yep.
There are certain areas of the city where there seem to be more, so there were more sightings in other areas. Uh, but we've looked into so many facets of it,
Mhm.
uh, from the occult to witchcraft to ritual, uh, something to do with the paranormal itself,
Man.
something to do with interdimensional, extraterrestrial, historical, the whole 9 yards. And we just can't put a finger on either one of them at this point.
Mm. That has been man, that has been a really awesome overview of the Chicago Mothman. I have something you mentioned, and this is gonna be to the side, but I feel like I've gotten a really good overview of the Mothman, but you mentioned something earlier that um are the pterosaur sightings, are those all over the place, or like where are those really? Those are coming out of everywhere?
The Midwest is probably the most prevalent, but we've had sightings
Oh wow.
here in Pennsylvania as well. The southwest part of the United States has had a fair amount of them. California, especially early on in California,
Hmm.
Utah, and those areas, Texas, southern Texas, south of San Antonio, down to the Mexican border.
Wow.
There's been a lot of crazy stuff down there, bird
Mm.
like, even small T Rex type creatures.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah,
Wow.
I have gotten a lot of stuff over the years, and
Mhm.
but no, these pterosaur sightings are, every once in a while we'll get a good one and we'll look into it. But you talk about the Van Meter visitor, and Chad
Yeah.
Lewis did the investigation. It was an excellent investigation, an excellent book. He believes this thing came from a cave system not
Yep.
far from Van Meter, and that
Yep.
very well
Yep.
may be. But I think it was definitely a pterosaur.
That is really interesting. It's like people either say usually bat, or they say more people go towards dinosaur, pterosaur, things like that.
Well, the
Which
size
I'm
itself, I
more at
mean,
that. Yeah.
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 I mean, the head description and
Mhm.
the fact that it can move uh, on the ground, and
Yep.
you know,
Upside down,
I
crawling
think
upside
I
down.
think I think the actual descriptions and behavior tends to be possible pterosaur.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. We definitely miss having the festival this year, but I go to it every year. It's a good time. Um, what do you mind doing an overview of like, uh, I know you've written a few books. Like if people that are watching this, like if they want to, check out your stuff, what are like the main uh, things that you've published that would relate to the Chicago Mothman?
Well, I wrote a book in 2000, end of 2017, which
Hmm.
was titled Mothman Dynasty: Chicago's
Yep.
Winged Humanoids. That covers 2017, but of course, this continued on.
Right.
So I
Right.
published a book earlier this year titled Winged Cryptids, Humanoids, Monsters, and uh, Anomalous Creatures. I can forget. Anomalous Creatures Casebook. And
Yeah.
basically, it's the remainder of the sightings up until some of the sightings we had in Chicago up until
Okay.
late spring this year. And of course, uh, Tobias wrote a book, The
Yep.
Lake Michigan Mothman, back in 2019. I kind of picked up where he left off there. And but
Interesting.
that
Okay.
Winged Cryptid book has pterosaurs, other
Nice.
strange winged beings and such. So you know, it's all cases that I had been involved with.
Okay. That
It's
is
not
cool.
just
That's cool.
random cases. It's cases I have been involved with.
Awesome. Before we go, do you mind sharing you mentioned that there was the initial Bigfoot sighting that kicked off your this is like you said 40 years ago. It was
Yeah,
a
it was
yeah,
1981.
yeah.
May 9th, 1981. I was living in Sykesville, Maryland at the time. There was an area I used to go fly fishing on the south branch of the Tapsco River. I was there out one morning about 10 in the morning, in the river with chest waders on, and I was just fly fishing. And there was I noticed a dog on the north side of the river moving about in the weeds. And I mean, I happened to know he's there, but he wasn't bothering me. So I just continued fishing until I heard a yelping sound.
Mm,
And when I heard the yelp, I looked in the direction that I had seen the dog, and something stood up in the wigs, in the weeds. Now,
wow.
this thing was big. Had fur, hair, or whatever. I could see from chest up, but it was big. It was about 7 foot in height, maybe a little more. Um, of course, I stopped fishing. I was looking at this thing. It moved towards my left, towards a clearing out of the brush, and stopped and just stood looking at me. We locked
Mm,
eyes for about 10 seconds. And this thing, like I said, was 7 to 8 foot in height, dark brown hair, but it looked like what I've always said. It looked like a Neanderthal. It looked more human than it did ape.
interesting.
Um, it had the thick brow ridge and everything, the flat nose, and the skin on its face was darkish color, but everything else was dark brown. And you know,
Mm,
there was areas on this that I could see it looked matted, and you know, so this thing just stood there and looked at me, you know, and it just turned and moved briskly up into the woods and walked away. So this is 1981. Of course, I heard of the Beast of Boggy Creek and all that stuff,
yep.
but I
Yep.
wasn't really into Bigfoot or
Okay.
cryptozoology. So I'm actually not knowing what the hell I'm looking at. So before, you know, after I took my jaw out of the water from being in shock looking at this thing,
Right.
I immediately went to my car and took off for town. Now I was like 3 minutes out of Sykesville, and
Okay.
when I got to, there was a bar right there on the side of the road, right by the river, and I jumped out and got on a payphone and called local cops. The Sykesville police told them about it, but not, besides the snickering while I was on the phone, they said, well, all I can tell you is go back and somebody will meet you there. So I figured I'd go back, and it's only a 3-minute drive. I'd go back and be waiting forever for somebody to show up. But when I got there, there was already a Maryland State Police officer standing there.
Wow.
One of those wooden barriers across the road.
Yeah.
And I pulled up. He came to the window and said, "You got to go. You got to get out of here." And I said, "Well, look, I made the call, and Sykesville told me to come here and wait." They said, "No, you got to go." So I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's going on? First of all, I didn't expect anybody to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in Sykesville, so I turned around and went home. And, I waited about an hour, and I thought to myself, I'm going back down there. So I did. I got in the car, drove on back down there. And by the time I got down there were cars everywhere. And I mean, I had to literally park on the side of the road and walk about a quarter mile back up to where the location was. And when I got there were people standing there. There was a Howard County police officer there then. And I just went up to him and said, "Well, what's going on?" He started laughing. He said, "Oh, somebody said they saw a Bigfoot." Well, I wasn't going to tell him I'm the one that made the call. But there were guys with dogs going everywhere in the woods, along the river, up into the bushes and stuff. They had a big white tent set up across the river. I don't know what was going on there. There were police cars everywhere. There were the old black Wagoneers that the feds used to drive back then. There were 2 of those sitting there. And I heard helicopters. Didn't see any helicopters, but I heard them. So anyway, I was there for a bit, and I turned around and went on back home. So when I got home, I called some of the local TV stations in Baltimore and told them about what I'd seen, what was going on. And they said, "Oh yeah, we'll give you a call back in a day or two after we make some inquiries." Well, 4 days later, I'm calling them, and they don't want to talk to me.
Whoa.
So right there, I'm figuring, well, there's a cover up here. I don't know what's going on. Quite frankly, I later got I got a letter at that time. This is before the internet. I got a letter from a police officer from Sykesville who was there, telling me how they got run out, and they were looking for something described as Bigfoot.
Yeah.
He couldn't understand why the government was there. I had found out later that a woman downstream had seen this thing a couple hours before I did, and made a report. And I think the feds were actually looking for it. I think they were looking for it because of possibly being something that was escaped, down in that area. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Baltimore, Washington area, but there are a lot of government facilities that nobody has any idea what the hell they are.
I would imagine so, yeah.
And I don't know if it was part of that, something escaped or whatever. Yeah, I've heard so many stories over the years of possible government involvement in these things. So I don't know what it was. I have written about it. I've talked about it. There was an apparent skeleton of a Bigfoot found down by Marriottsville, Maryland, by Piney Run. I talked to an individual who saw it. He said this thing was no human. He said it was huge.
Wow.
And he said, we found pieces of desiccated fur. But he said when he and his friend looked at it, the first thing they said were, "Where are the clothes?" They measured the humerus on this thing. It was 21 inches long.
Wow.
Which is huge. And so what they did, they actually called the police. And like my encounter, all hell broke loose. I mean, helicopters coming in, a 300-yard barrier was set around this thing. That was only a few years after I had my encounter. So, something has been going on around there. And I still get sightings from the area. There have been some Class A sightings there over the years. The Sykesville monster incident happened about 8 years before my encounter, where this thing had actually broke into homes and broke into chicken pens, and actually a garage it broke into, had an encounter with a police officer. That was reported nationwide as well. If you look Sykesville monster, you'll find it. If you find it, look on Google.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
The whole story will come up. But yeah, so it's a long involved thing, but it's still sightings going on in the area.
That's cool. That's cool, man. Thanks, Lon. This has been a very, very interesting interview. This has been good stuff. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look more into your stuff. This has been really cool, dude. But thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you having me.
You got
it. The blog is fansofmonsters.com. We also have a YouTube channel.
Oh yes, please. My mistake. Please plug everything. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's beyond explanation.
Okay.
I have my own radio show that I do on YouTube, and all the archives are there. We have some small documentaries that we have recorded there.
Okay.
So yeah, it's we started about 6 months ago, and it's starting to pick up in subscribership. So it pretty well, in all the cases, are cases that I have either been involved with or I have reported on over the years.
Awesome. So the books, the website, but then there's also a YouTube show that's been going on for about 6 months.
Yeah, beyond explanation. If you go to the blog, all the links to the show are to that channel are there.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sure that our paths will cross again someday. Have a good night, man.
Okay, you too.
You got it.